Welcome to the Education Blueprint. I'm Dr. Jon Rysewyk, Superintendent of Knox County Schools in Knoxville, Tennessee.
And I'm Prentice Elliott, a public school parent and your producer and co-host.
Well, Prentice, this is it. The last episode of the 24-25 school year.
Yeah, this will be our 8th, and surprisingly, they've been a lot better than I expected. And I'm not trying to toot our horn or anything, but, you know, when you start a new venture, you don't really know what to expect. It's been, I think, really fun.
It really has been. I think you're right. You know, we all kind of sat in a room and thought about what we wanted to get out of this, to lift it from paper and actually get through it and see just how many people are really passionate about education. I think has been really cool.
Yeah, we've had some great guests talking about stuff that's been really helpful, I think, for students in particular, jobs, college, military service, what they're going to do after graduation. We're getting about to that time now. It is graduation time. You're going to go to every graduation of all of our Knox County high schools. And as we think about that, what is your advice to these students? Some main piece of advice, something important that you think they should all take away?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about that. I mean, we have roughly 4,300 kids, I think, last year in the graduation. And I guess my first would be wash your hands, because I'm going to shake every one of your hands over the course of 2 weeks. No, I'm kidding. It's really neat to be in each community and be able to see those graduations taking place on football field. Pray for no rain, right, so we can get through those.
I was going to say, also bring an umbrella.
That's exactly.
Or at least have your parents do it.
We have had that. We had one last year that was a bit of a monsoon, but they all rebounded well. So, you know, I guess what I would say, the first thing I would say to those students is trust your preparation. I think that's always the thing. Anytime I've tried something new, I've talked about how have I gotten ready, and that's what gives you confidence, right? I've done this before. I've been there. It's like when you train for an athletic event, a run or a lift or something like that, you're going, well, wait a minute, I did this yesterday. I think I can do this today. You'll doubt yourself. There's no doubt. Anytime we stretch and break out of that, we will. So you have to fall back on your confidence of what you did to get to there. And I think just to go ahead and know right now, we'll come off graduations are always kind of this high, and celebrations, and family you haven't seen in 10 years comes in, and, you know, the schools do a great job celebrating that. So you're kind of on this high, but deep down in the pit of your stomach, you're probably a little overwhelmed about what's going to come up in the next couple months. And just know all the people that we had as guests this year, you and I ourselves have all been there too.
Mm-hmm.
And you have that level of doubt that sets in at some point. And we've heard some great, very accomplished people, 4-star generals, mayors, all these kinds of people, and they're going, they went through the same thing. This is part of that maturation process. Be ready. It's going to hit you one day. You're going to go, what am I doing? Can I do this? And then back to falling back on your prep, falling back on your network. And then just really you've got to tell yourself, you got this. You've gotten ready for it.
Yeah, I think I would say along those same lines is be open. And we heard a lot of our guests say this. It's all kind of a learning experience. It doesn't end at school. If you're open to being willing to learn and try new things and maybe take a different path every once in a while, I think that's hard when you're younger because, as you said, you're scared. You don't know. But everybody's been there. I
really think you're right. Having 2 daughters in college now, you look back on that, and seldom, if you're the student in it, is about what you think it's about. Whether it is enlisting, whether it is enrolling, whether you're going to employment, every one of those is going to stretch you past a boundary that you had out of your comfort zone. You're coming off of being the kind of kings and queens of the hill, right? When you're the seniors of the school, and you're going to go back to feeling like you're entry level on all those. Freshmen in college, entry level in employment, or you're going through basic training. Like on all those that we learned from guests this year too. That's all meant to do that, to start pushing you to a place to know yourself better. You only do that by pushing yourself and pushing those boundaries. A conversation I had with my oldest daughter who's graduating from college this year was, Dad, some of those classes I just didn't want to do. And I said, that's part of the plan. Like, part of growing is doing things you don't want to do. And employers see that down the road. They know what it took to get a degree, and they know everything wasn't your favorite class, but did you persevere? Did you work through that? And in the end, did you learn and maybe change your opinion about something because of that? And that's part of that development. And every one of our graduates will be going through that over the next 4 years.
Yeah, and it's less about does someone have the same exact experience and know the same exact thing that you need to figure out for your next task. And it's more about, has someone lived this before? Because it's about learning how to do life and how to be a person in the world. So I already mentioned I think the podcast is better than I thought it would be. I did have high expectations, but I think we're doing good so far. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, Prentice, again, we were in that room with pencils and paper, really trying to get to, why would we do it? Podcasts are cool right now. And there's data out about so many people who listen to, I listen to podcasts, and our goal was never to compete with Joe Rogan. They're the top podcast across the world. We're not looking for likes and clicks. For us, there's so much good work going on in the district, but there's so many kind of myths and behind the scene and misunderstandings about all of it. And I think really what we've set out to do is kind of in a longer format, dive deeper into issues that people have questions about. And I think it's been a great chance to bring other people in to hear that. Sometimes, again, as a superintendent, it's like your parents say it to you, but then someone else does, and your kids go, oh, I learned something today, right?
Yeah.
So it's great to have experts come in too and talk about the value and where that fits in. These conversations really happen behind the scenes. And the general public doesn't get to see my interactions with the mayor or, our interactions with some of these support organizations or we dive into literacy and to hear a literacy expert go, no, like these are the things that matter. And we'll go, we think so too. So our hope in this is that it brings more people into the journey. We've said before, getting the next generation ready is not strictly the school system. It's also going to take everyone doing their part, parents, businesses, nonprofits, all these stakeholders have to come to the table to get us ready. And I think if you understand something better, you're much more apt to jump on board and be a champion for that and be a participant. And that's what we want.
Looking at some of the stats, more than half of all Americans between the ages of 12 and 55, 55% are listening to podcasts on a monthly basis. And that's basically what we're seeing for our show. 9% are younger than 22, which was a little surprising to me. Half of that 9% are younger than 17. The bulk are in that 23 to 59 age range. So we're getting everybody from middle schoolers to parents, maybe even some young grandparents. And you mentioned, finding a new way to reach people. Can you talk to me a little bit more about why we need other people on board in public schools?
Yeah, I mean, like we said before, it's a big task to prepare the next generation. And we talk about we're the group that wakes up every day thinking about it, right? We're charged with the English and the math and the science and getting all those standards taught to students just for that knowledge base. But there's so much more that goes into it. I think, we've talked with Mike Odom some about this year, but talking about the 865 Academy and how we've redesigned high schools. I was fortunate to be in a meeting this week where we had a bunch of CEOs that were actually visiting one of our high schools, and we heard students articulating things about their experiences and aptitude testing they've had and where they're thinking different about careers. And to see the CEOs take pride in the fact that some of their companies were named by the students as the field experiences they had. And they're going, wow, this is valuable. That's a place where that company is now playing a role in designing the future of Knox County. By having that access, the school system can't provide that. We can't provide a trip to, this was a DeRoyal Medical. They're one of our Halls High School's partners. We can't get them in there. We had a student talking about wanting to be an engineer and talking to engineers that design some of the medical supplies that they use at DeRoyal and making career choices off of that. We can't do that alone, right? There's so many places that schools can't reach that are still important places to raise the next generation. And the more folks understand that, the more they can come along and understand their role.
Of all of our episodes, our most popular, this might be a little surprising, was the Snow Day episode with Todd Howell from WBIR. Fun episode. Second most popular was, this is probably not surprising, was Sharon Roberts on literacy. It's a big topic right now for a lot of reasons. What has been, whether it's those two or any other episodes, the best nugget of information or something that surprised you that's come out of this?
Yeah, I'll say this. It doesn't now, in hindsight, surprise me that weather would be the top one. Todd Howell was a great guest for that. I think if you watch any of my social media, so it doesn't surprise me. I would say, I remember Howard. He is a local media person that we interact with.
Howard Hill.
Howard Hill, yeah. He said something that was just kind of a side nugget about you always have to be prepared because you never know when your opportunity is going to come up. And I thought, man, what a great thing for our kids too to hear. There's so many times you practice stuff, whether it's in athletics, whether it's a band instrument, whether it is writing letters, right, over and over, that kind of thing. And it's not just to do it to comply because people older and taller than you are telling you to do it, right?
Right.
Like you get into it and you're going, it's about preparation for that opportunity. And I thought his story about how he got into media and those sorts of things was really just about him prepping without really any opportunity. And when the opportunity came, he jumped. And, now he's one of the most trusted voices in media, and reason we had him on to talk about it. I think about General Arnie Bunch, who came on, and I never heard it put this way, but he talked about, I knew I was born to lead, and I wanted to lead. And if I had gone the corporate route, it would have taken me 10 years before I got the chance, because there's this whole seniority, work your way up. But, he talked about leading older men and women when he was younger, and what he had to learn to do that. So I think, to me, it wasn't always the clarity just on the topic. It was some of the little nuggets they dropped along the way like that meant a lot.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned General Arnie Bunch. He's now the superintendent of Hamlin County Schools. Mm-hmm. But when he talked about just the different things that the military can do for you, as someone who didn't grow up in a military family, a lot of it is a little new to me. It's kind of like we talked to him. There's a different language there, and if you don't speak that language, it's hard to find your way in. But just the different ROTC paths, the National Guard and Reserves, the Surface Academies, all of those things. It was just very eye-opening, and I thought very helpful as a parent just to hear the different options that are available, and hopefully, people that listen also got something out of that.
Yeah, I'll say this too. I appreciate the perspective you brought to the podcast. It's nice having somebody who's, although you work for Knox County Schools, you're not a trained educator. It can be real easy sometimes for me and the guest to kind of geek out in our back and forth. And you were good to kind of bring us back to earth and kind of say, parents probably want to know this, right? Or what does this mean?
Yeah, there's a long list of things that I do not know. And if that can be helpful, then I'm glad. All right, this is a great opportunity for us to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to answer some audience questions that they've had throughout the season. But for now, this is the Education Blueprint with Dr. Jon Rysewyk.
This is the Education Blueprint. I'm Dr. Jon Rysewyk, here with my co-host, Prentice Elliott, and we're about to answer a few questions we've gotten from listeners over this first season. So, Prentice, what do we have?
All right, our first question: how does the school calendar get made?
Wow. We have elves.
I can already tell it's not simple.
Yeah, it isn't just me going, you know what, we should have school on these days, right? There are a lot of requirements in law, and we have our assistant superintendent of academics actually runs this process for us, because it is a pretty involved process. It does take a lot of input from a lot of people. It also takes a lot of understanding of a lot of laws. So we're required by law to go for 180 days. That's calendar days you have to be in school. Knox County Schools, in order to get inclement weather days or sick days or whatever we end up using those days for, to bank those extra days, we go a half an hour longer than we're required by law every day.
Now, is that common? Is that something that's been done for a long time?
Yeah, we have for a long time, and it's common practice. It's actually allowed in that law to do it. So for those 13 days, we have 3 of those that are in-service days, which is a day when teachers meet to train. Kids aren't at home. You can count those as instructional days as long as it falls between the first day kids are in school and the last day kids are in school.
Okay, so during the school year, you got 3 days you can be in service.
So kids attend 177, and those 3 in-service days that count for instructional days to the 180. Then we have 8 days for the inclement weather and 4 days of something we did start more recently, which is the early release. It's really time for teachers. They stay, kids go. They're working on either their individual school's improvement plan, they're working on trainings for that individual school. So we have that kind of settled now. It equates to 4 uses of 4 of those days the way we do it. So 4 days for that. 3 days for the in-service days that we have, and then 8 days that go to inclement weather. So that's how we use those 13 days.
Okay.
So we get this question a lot of times. We didn't have any snow this year, so can we just end school 13 days early? And you can't, because there's still that law of the 180 days you have to be in school, right? You take those 30-minute increments over time, you stack those up, and you earn 13 days. So we had a solar eclipse in August, and we closed down. You go, we haven't accrued the time yet. They know you're going to, over the course of that year, accrue time to get to those 13 days. So you can use it on credit, I guess, if you will.
So that's the total number of days. Where those days fall on the calendar is a whole nother matter, and it's not just you making these decisions.
No, it's so we said before, it's a process, and our assistant superintendent of academics leads this process now. We have to do some of the law interpretation and get it down to about 3 or 4 versions. Teachers come back before our students come back, typically about a week or so. We try not to bring kids back till the 1st of August. There's something about that whole July time that kind of throws everybody off. It's still summer, right? So we really try not to start anything before then. And when winter break happens, matters a whole lot. And Christmas is probably the bigger holiday of all those. The 25th falls at different Tuesday here, Wednesday there, right? So all those matter when you're putting them up against weekends and how long those breaks are. And then the other one is on the other end of the calendar is Memorial Day. Last thing you want to do is send everyone off for Memorial Day and then teachers have to come back to work for one day. So we kind of have these bookends of where we got to start in by, and then we have the middle around winter break and the holidays that are around it. And then the other part of that, if you're in a high school, you're taking half of your classes in the first semester, brand new different classes in the second semester. So we also have to make sure we're balancing those calendar days so that you don't have 80 days to take English and 100 days in the spring to take this, this other class. So
fall break and spring break
right.
as well.
So when we look at that, we do try to balance the days on both semesters. Now, usually our inclement weather is going to happen in the spring semester in those January to February days. So we do pad that one a little bit more with the assumption we're going to take a few days. So that's usually a bit of a longer semester, a little bit shorter in the fall. But all those pieces go in and they're cooked into it. You talked about where do we get input. Our academics team have a calendar committee that meets first. It's made up of like our teachers of the year are on it. We have some district office folks. We have some principals on it from all different places just to have eyes on kind of these 3 or 4 versions that are put together. They make it kind of an official vote on one of those. We then take those out to those regional teacher and parent councils, and we get their input on each one of those. And I know this past year was one where there was a suggestion made that wasn't on either of those. It was something from like a second version of the calendar that they wanted to add to this fourth version of the calendar. When they combined the two, it was perfect. Everyone loved it. So when that's done, then we take that to the board, usually a year and a half in advance of when they need it.
That was going to be my next question is how far out can you plan this in advance?
In a perfect world, it would be 2 years, like it would already be out there. Because interestingly, we understand that there are families that plan much better than I do, apparently, that are looking 2 years out going, we're trying to plan that vacation, or our daughter graduates that year and trying to look to when those are going to be. So we try never to let it be under a year and a half out. But really the most important thing is getting it right and getting enough eyes on it to feel like that it's something that can work.
And so this whole process, extensive, takes a long time. And then still, once you get into the school year, I would imagine most every year you're going to have to make changes and kind of move within that system. And framework.
There are. You've still got to hit that requirement. So that's when you start talking about taking in-service day and making an instructional day, and the board votes on that, or taking 2 days off spring break or extend the school year. We haven't had to do that because we've been creative with our days, even in bad weather years. But yeah, so far, again, the process has worked well by getting a lot of input from folks.
All right, let's pause for a quick break and some more listener questions when we come back, as well as some wild cards. You're listening to the Education Blueprint. I've got a jar here with AI-generated questions. We're going to do a quick lightning round. No points, no pressure. Welcome back to the Education Blueprint with Dr. Jon Rysewyk. Our next question is actually sort of direct to you, Jon. There's been a lot of recent conversation about federal state proposals that could impact K-12 education. For example, closure of the U.S. Department of Education at the national level, state level, lawmakers discussing things like immigration, vouchers, cell phones in schools, issues like that, hot button stuff that's always going on. How do you deal with that as superintendent? Are you monitoring that and then kind of reacting as they each come up?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think different people have taken different approaches on those kinds of things. And to answer your question, I would say we monitor them to know what's happening, but that it doesn't preoccupy us that we don't continue to do our job, right? And it happens almost every spring when changes start to take place. People will test bills in the in the media, right? They'll kind of get them out and see what reactions are. It does cause a lot of people to wonder, to start kind of speculating what this could mean or not mean, either from the federal or the state side. I had conversations with legislators, or sometimes they'll call and ask questions, and we're happy to share our opinions. To jump on things early doesn't really serve anybody well. We would spend our whole spring chasing every bill, and most of those never come to fruition, right? What we're trying to do is spend our energy and time on what we've been charged to do, which is make sure that every student can read, every student does well in math, every student has a plan, and they're going to be successful when they leave high school.
That makes sense, but has anything changed in our practice as a district regarding these kind of things?
There's not, because we've adopted that mentality the last 3 years. We wait until laws are in, and then we move forward. So around the issues that you were just speaking to, let me be clear on that. Around immigration, the federal department going away, vouchers, we'll wait to see what all that means, and we'll move forward with that. I will say on vouchers, this was something that's been kicked around for the last 6 years, and so I think every school system's been preparing for the possibility that might happen. Whether we have that external pressure or not, Knox County Schools, we don't take for granted that our families come to us. We think we need to compete every day for that. So whether there were vouchers or not, we were going to continue to improve to do that. You've seen that in things like 865 academies, like, why remake the high schools? Well, because we can be better, and we're seeing those opportunities for kids now. So that was going to be there for us, whether vouchers passed or not. Now that it is, it's there, and families make a choice, but we always approached it like families had a choice to make. As far as immigration, nothing's changed on our fronts. We serve all students who come in. We believe strongly that education is a great equalizer for every student, and we're going to serve all students who show up at the door. There's no law prohibiting us from doing that, or no funding, lack of funding prohibiting that to happen. So we're going to continue to do that. It's the right thing to do to education. Educating people more is never a bad thing. Where the Department of Ed goes, we don't know. It doesn't really matter to us because we're going to have to carry out our mission regardless of that.
And these issues, as similar issues have come up before, I think it's important to note, like library books, the third grade retention law.
Yeah.
And this approach has worked.
It has. Those were great examples, Prentice. You talk about, we'll take third grade retention. When that came and that law was passed, basically saying if students don't hit certain things, they can't move on to the fourth grade. There were some ways to get them there with some additional interventions through tutoring, through summer programming. And all along, there was a lot of emotion. There was a lot of fear that we were going to have these enormous third grade class and nobody in fourth grade, or would we have enough teachers to do it, all these things. And I applaud our team. We kept our head. We made sure we understood the law. We made sure, more than anything, it was going to be about, are the kids ready? That's the big thing. And so what were we doing in our pre-K through 2 to make sure kids were never having to even worry about this when they got to third grade? You saw Knox County schools over time expand their pre-K programs, develop their curriculum strongly in there, develop kind of a regional structure, but around pre-K programs to build that. A lot of work done on our principals in that K-2 space, and then a lot done around tutoring, a lot done around summer programming. And, through all of that stuff, we've had no more than 40 students retained. Would not have been terribly abnormal from where we were prior to the law being passed. So I think that's an example. That library book's the same way. There was a lot of feelings on all sides about how that should be done. We fell back to our trusted 91 experts who have master's degrees, our librarians. We worked with the law department to interpret law. We put together various levels of committees to make it a big deal to pull a book off the shelf because that matters. And so we want to make sure we're compliant with law, but we don't want to be overreactive to the law. And so, now it's a quarterly process that we review, and people just have accepted that is the right way to do it. And again, kept our heads, stay focused on students, and have moved forward. And I think it's worked really well for us.
Having said that, I've always been curious. As a superintendent, you don't make the laws. Legislators do that. The Board of Education sets the policy. District receives funding, and then it's your job to allocate those resources in a way that has the greatest impact on students. But beyond that, can you help us understand what exactly your role is as the leader of the district?
Yeah, my job isn't to weigh in on things that could happen, legislation, laws, tax increases, those kinds of things. There are people who run for office to do those things. I know a lot of those folks, work with a lot of those folks, and I admire those people for wanting to do that, but that's really not what the role of the superintendent is. The superintendent, in essence, is the leader of this organization that has which is a school system, which has a very clear role in a community to make sure that all of the students are prepared and all of the pieces that go into making that happen. So no matter what happens to a budget, no matter what law gets passed, our mission doesn't change.
There's always topics that come up, and I know as a person that you have opinions. You have strong opinions. So how do you deal with that? How do you make the distinction between what your job is and what your feelings are?
Yeah, that's a great question, too. I know what the board hired me to do. Very robust interview process for that. I was very clear on if we got the job, these were the things we were going to do. And it was all going to be centered around students and around increasing their outcomes. But I am a human. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm a citizen of Knox County, right? Citizen of Tennessee. And, I have my beliefs. But for this job and when I'm at work, that's not what's driving me to do that. What's driving me every day is every student getting the opportunities that they need. That's what I am charged to do as a superintendent. And all 60,000 of our students, I want to make sure they're having the exposure to the interventions, to the literacy, to the grade level text that they need. I want to make sure that they're getting the same opportunities at every high school to be able to interface with business no matter where that is, right? I want to make sure that they have their athletics and their band programs with the highest quality because that's a big part of what they do. So I spend all my time and energy on that. And what I feel about certain issues on the side, that's not going to change what I do every day.
So what I'm hearing is, like the CEO of a company, you're responsible for guiding the vision and leading the development of systems and structures to make that vision a reality. You're not expressly supervising every department head, principal, assistant principal, and employee.
Yeah, I would say that even that may be a misconception. In a district our size with 91 schools, I don't directly supervise. We have a structure for that. I think when you're an organization this big, you've got to make sure that everybody has a clear role. You got to make sure everybody understands the mission, and you got to make sure that everybody has deliverables on that role to make sure we're moving all of our resources and everything is aligned to get the better outcomes for students.
To do that, you've organized the district office departments into 5 main divisions.
An assistant superintendent is over each one of those. We have an academics division that was going to be all of our teaching and learning, all of our schools themselves, as well as the structures of administration, counselors, all that. Another one is student success. Basically, that exists to remove all obstacles for students. We understand the 60,000 kids, they're not widgets, right? So that's our school culture team that works on everything from behavioral changes, expectations, kind of deep knowledge of the brain and how that interacts with learning. We have our special education services that come with IEPs, 504s, and then we also have all of our interventions that can be anything from tutoring to what we call RTI, which is a response to intervention. The whole division kind of exists to go, okay, we know where we want every student to be, but if they're not there, what supports are going to get them there and level that playing field. We combined 2 of our large departments, business and talent, and then the finance side. Those had been 2 separate departments. We came in and put them into one, which really streamlined a lot of our processes. Our hiring windows are faster, our budgets are tighter aligned.
And then you mentioned 91 schools, so that's 91 buildings. Then we've got other buildings that need maintenance and security. We've got departments that manage transportation, student meals. So that's another division there.
It is. All of that falls under operations that supports everything that we do. And then we have strategy, all the communication that has to happen, all the data monitoring, all the project management to make sure we're staying true to our strategic plan. We're staying true to the initiative plans that we lift up. All has to be measured, monitored, and communicated. And they
internally and externally.
Yeah. It's so funny because I would say that was a lesson learned after year 1. We focused hard on external. So that was a correction that we've done over the last couple of years to really start going, that message is critically important to the folks inside who are doing it too.
So that's the divisions. But the district, all the schools, are divided into 5 regions too, by feeder pattern and location in the county, and each region has sort of its own leadership team.
Correct. Prior to that, all high schools had a leader, all middle schools had a leader, all elementary had a leader. Problem with that is most of those supervisors were spending a lot of their day driving from one side of the county to the next side, right? And pretty much we're putting out fires. So everything that you need to do to push in, to develop, to say, show me evidence, celebrate the good things, there wasn't time for that. Those things still happen, but now the largest region has 20 schools, and this is going to be elementary up to high school, and our smallest region has 13. So a director and a supervisor have a whole team of people from special education to math to reading to science, just focus on those 20 schools, on those 13 schools. And a neat thing we've seen out of that is now we're talking more in feeder patterns and vertical planning, because kids don't go to an elementary school in the middle and high, and they do that, but they're not separate parts of their lives. They want to see that flow and that connection throughout. So I think we've allowed to do a little more of that by having the structure.
The bigger picture, seeing elementary to high school in one snapshot. You've mentioned before being a systems thinker. This is kind of a pretty good illustration of how that might work in practice, I would imagine.
100%. I mean, one thing that I think about all the time in my role is all of our money is taxpayers trusting us to prepare the next generation. It's their kids, their grandkids, their nephew, their niece. And so we have to be as efficient as possible. One, because it's not our money, and when we should be transparent and accountable for that. And the second part is we can't make that many mistakes, because these kids don't get a second shot at 3rd grade, at 7th grade, right? So the only way you can make sure that's happening is assign an owner, assign a task, assign clarity on metrics, and then do it, and then measure against that and have the conversations to be better and continuously improve.
So toward the goal of continuous improvement, what are you doing day to day? Your other duties as assigned?
So a lot of embracing the community, and that's various stakeholders. The business community, I've gone out to ask CEOs for opportunities for our students to be able to come to their place of business and have some field experience. I still go out to schools every week, and we'll spend some time with the principal there to hear him or her, their vision, how things are going. And then I also meet with a group of teachers, and I usually have something that we're driving toward, something within one of those divisions, one of their goals, that I want to hear, how is it working on the ground, right? I mean, there's a lot of layers between me and that teacher in the classroom, and we have checks and balances and one-on-one meetings and quarterly updates, but I just want to sit down and go, hey, this is the year where we were trying to do this in special education. Like, be honest with me. Is it happening? What's going well? What's not? They tell me, which is great, which gives me feedback to come back to our team when we have our assistant superintendents and we meet at that level to kind of go, on the ground, I'm hearing this. And it lets us go back and say, well, we need to retweak a training. Or sometimes we go, we probably don't need to do that anymore, right? Yeah. So all those things are real important. I still spend time, half a day, try to get into one region every year, to spend a half day with a teacher from bus duty on, to just get a feel for the classroom. What's happening. It's fun to see kids. That always makes things better.
Okay, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, you can put your vision casting hat back on and tell us a little bit about what's in store for Season 2 of the Education Blueprint. Welcome back to the Education Blueprint. John, what can you tell us about next season?
Well, I think we'll announce right now so everyone knows that there will be a season 2.
That's good. Yeah, it's good for me to know that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think our mind's already at work for the next topics.
We've kicked around a few ideas for next season's episode. Nothing so far has been set in stone. One of them, though, that we definitely want to get to is the new Chief of Security, Carlos Granillo. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, Chief Granillo's been great. Like, he jumped in, hit the ground running, has really been very active, very involved, and we're excited to bring him in and let people just get to hear his vision and his heart for kids.
All right, now also think about an episode on how to support kids dealing with anxiety. That's a big topic for families across all grade levels, kind of in the zeitgeist right now. It came up when we talked with Hamlin County Superintendent 4-star General Arnie Bunch. He mentioned the book The Anxious Generation, which he said was one of his favorite books he's read recently. We've got other topics on hand as well.
Yeah, I think it would be a good conversation plan just around innovative schools. And people are like, ooh, what does that mean? Well,
Sounds like they all should be, right?
They should be. We want top-notch schools everywhere, but this whole environment to maybe launch some innovative ideas will be out there. And I think, right now everyone's talking about AI and just, what does that mean? And there's some practical pieces for it, but there's also some really cool opportunities that we can dream about. So I think some conversations around those areas would be good.
Yeah, and we'd also like to hear from listeners about what they would want us to talk about. They can share ideas with us via social media or email us at theeducationblueprint@knoxschools.org to share their questions or topics. Now, you mentioned AI was a potential topic. Before we totally wrap up this episode and this season, our team proposed a little activity, an AI-tivity, if you will. I've got a jar here with AI-generated questions. We're going to do a quick lightning round. No points, no pressure, but I'll start off. I'll draw the first one. You and I have not seen these.
We have not seen them. Make it a softball, Prince.
Okay, well.
My favorite color. I hope that's what AI generated.
Okay. What is your go-to snack during a long meeting or a work day? And I will say that you have a very, I wouldn't necessarily say specific, but you have perhaps a different diet than most.
Yeah. I was just going to say that. I try to not do processed food, and kind of outside of fish, don't do meat. So, yeah, I'm pretty strict on a lot of that kind of stuff. But still, at the board meeting, they always set out a water and a few little pieces of chocolate. So I'll try to stay away from it if it's an hour and a half meeting, but I've usually downed it if it's over that.
So
dark chocolate. I like dark chocolate.
Okay. Does that mean that if you know it's going to be a long meeting, are you bringing some mackerel?
Yeah, no. Well, I usually, it is funny, sometimes we talk about ordering pizza, but no, I'm pretty much creature habit. Eat the same thing every day, no matter what. But in those meetings, all bets are off after 5 o'clock. You tend to eat what's there. There's a small stash in the back room of the boardroom for those long meetings where we can get like peanuts and crackers. So that's usually what we'll do.
All right, let's try another. I'll draw one more, and then you can draw one.
Okay.
And
I'm about to say, don't make me answer all these, Prentice.
Yeah. All right. What's something totally ordinary that you have a strong and possibly unreasonable opinion about? We asked you before about your opinions. This would be something that might not be quite the hot button issue.
Wow. I'm trying to think. Like, I don't,
Well, I would say, just from your last answer, you have a possibly unreasonable opinion about food.
About food?
And what you're willing to eat.
See, the unreasonable, I'm like, I think it's very reasonable. I think the thing that's hard about that question is, like, I don't have this, like, fear of something because I don't know. I guess that's part of the educator. I mean, no matter what, I'm always interested to find out and then go, maybe I'll try it. Like, so a strong feeling.
It doesn't have to be about food.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about just things in general. I'm usually pretty open-minded. I'm going to read the question one more time. Something totally ordinary that you have a strong and possible unreasonable opinion about. Okay, I'll say this. I think the way I'm wired, we talked about systems earlier, is I just have a hard time tolerating inefficiency. And I'm not really a control freak. It's just in my head. I have things that are supposed to play a certain way. And so this is probably an example of that. My wife and I just got 30 chickens. And so I'm building, she says, a chicken barn because it's bigger than a chicken coop. But I only have certain amounts of time I can work on it. So I get really frustrated with the weather when it doesn't cooperate. Like, I have to stop and go, really? Like, those 3 hours it had to rain, So I'm learning I don't control all of those things, and it's okay to let it go. And I just have to adjust and plan differently.
Yeah, I think it's great what we're learning about you is that as a guy that doesn't eat meat, only sometimes eats fish, has a very specific diet. You like to control the weather if you could.
Yeah.
You're not a control freak.
Not at all.
So that's
not
good.
at all.
That's good.
I'm totally flexible.
This is very illuminating. All right. Speaking of not being a control freak, I'm going to let you be in charge of the questions here.
Prentice. Thank you. I'm good with that. What's your favorite weather? No, I'm just kidding. All right. If you could have dinner with any fictional character from a television commercial, who would it be? Boy, that's specific. I say we let him expand it to a show.
From a television
TV show.
And I would have to expand it even more to movies because it would be Mr. Miyagi from The Karate Kid.
Really?
Because that was, it may still be, but for a long time that was my favorite movie, and I just really enjoyed Mr. Miyagi as a character, as a person. Not many people know that Pat Morita, the actor, was nominated for an Oscar that year for his portrayal of Mr. Miyagi in 1986's Karate Kid. He was, John. It was a fantastic performance.
He is awesome.
He was also Arnold on Happy Days.
He was.
Yeah.
Ran the restaurant.
Yeah.
So I heard a weird thing the other day to make us feel old, that the guy who played Karate Kid is now like 3 years older than Miyagi when he did that, like right now.
That's amazing.
I know.
Yeah, he looks a lot better than Miyagi did.
Yeah, I know. He was like 50-something. He wasn't as old as everybody thought he was.
All right, let's get another question in here. If you could instantly become an expert in any skill, what would it be?
Okay, I would say this. I love to build stuff. One thing I have not mastered as a systems guy is anything automotive. Like, I can change oil, but like I would love to be able to diagnose like engines and fix them. And I can't do that.
Yeah, that's a skill that I read something that AI will never be able to overtake because it's so complex and there's so much manual dexterity. So if you could do that, then you would have a job that you could have forever, I suppose.
Yeah, there go my chances. AI can't do it. All right, I'm going to ask you one. If a theme song played every time you entered a room, what would it be?
What theme song?
You can't say the theme song to Karate Kid.
Yeah, You're the Best Around.
No Peter Cetera in this one.
No, that was Karate Kid. That was Karate Kid too.
No, okay,
it wasn't the
man.
Theme. I don't know. Maybe the theme from The Greatest American Hero.
Okay.
The early 80s. Do you remember
that
song?
I do remember that. Believe it or not.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember it.
And it's only because it's been stuck in my head for about 40 years. This one's for you. If animals could talk, which one do you think would be the most sarcastic? Man, AI is really working overtime to come up with
sarcastic
interesting questions.
I'm going to go, because they annoy me the most, I'm going to go houseflies, right? Because I just think you can't ever get them, right? You try to swat them, you try to, and like I have cats and dogs too, and they try to catch them, and it's like no matter what, you can't get to them. So I just always feel like they're laughing at me.
Yeah, this
when I'm running through my house.
Goes back to the Karate Kid, chopsticks. You just need some chopsticks.
He did it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be cats though that are the most sarcastic.
Yeah, I was afraid I would offend my cat, so I couldn't say it, but yeah.
Sarcastic and mean-spirited. All right, what's our last question?
They can be. Last question. What fictional teacher or principal do you think would thrive in real life?
That's interesting. Okay, so I know who would not thrive. That would be Mr. Belding from Saved by the Bell.
He would struggle.
He would struggle, I think, in most any job.
Yeah, those kids got by with a whole lot.
They really did. That was not a well-run high school.
No, I'm not sure it was safe or legal, all the things they did. But no.
All right, how about you?
Wow. I do like Abbott Elementary. I do like watching that.
Yeah.
I do think there's some nice sarcasm on some of those things that play out well, but I like in the end that they always come together. But there are definitely characters, if you've ever worked at a school, that they portray that you could probably recognize if you're in school.
Yeah, some archetypes, yeah.
Yeah, they do a really good job of that. But what I love at the end of those episodes is they're always back for the kids. I think that's what it takes to be a good educator, and I think that show captures well that they believe in their kids and they have fun about all the other issues.
Well, I can't think of a better place to wrap this episode than reminding people that education is about the kids. So that's it for this episode and for Season 1 of the Education Blueprint. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it and follow and subscribe to the Education Blueprint with Dr. Jon Rysewyk for easy access to all of our newest content. And if you can, leave us a review. It really helps others find the show. The Education Blueprint with Dr. Jon Rysewyk is a production of Knox County Schools and hosted by Dr. Jon Rysewyk with me, Prentice Elliott. Our team also includes Knox County Schools Assistant Superintendent of Strategy, Corey Lautner, KCS Creative Services Supervisor, Abby Harris, and KCS Executive Director of Public Affairs, Carly Harrington. Kaylee Walker coordinates promotion at Knox Schools on Facebook, X, and Instagram. Our cover art was designed by Justin Johnson.